Welcome back to the Adventurous Wrench channel and episode 2 of Save the Square. Save the Square is a build series to create a trail rig from a 1995 YJ Wrangler. Next step in the build process is I'm going to put on a slip yoke eliminator on the back of the transfer case. It eliminates the slip yoke in the NP231 on this Jeep. I got this from Crown Automotive as a kit with the drive shaft. New output shaft housing, new output shaft, new yoke, speedometer gear, and I got some gaskets in it. So this drive shaft is actually a double-cardan drive shaft rather than a single, so it has a lot more articulation and doesn't have to strain as hard to do so because it can articulate on two different U-joint points close together. I've got a spacer in here that lowers the transmission down. Normally it'd be bolted straight to the frame, so this is the only way I could do it with the lift kit originally and not put the slip yoke eliminator in there. The driveline's really short and the angle is pretty high going into the transfer case, and you can see the slip yoke right here coming out of the transfer case, kind of pulled out, probably a lot further than it was when it was original. What we're going to do is eliminate this whole thing, put a new one of these on here, new rear housing, and the new yoke is going to come out somewhere here, and then the new driveline will come off and it'll be much lower angle, something like this. We're going to start by taking the old driveline out, taking the caps off this U-joint. You can see the slip yoke went back up in there, and that'll come out. Good. Pulling out the speedometer sensor from the tail housing. Supporting the tail housing of the transfer case and removing the skid plate which holds the transmission and transfer case onto the vehicle. Removing the front drive line from the front end of the transfer case. Removing the drain bolt with some difficulty to drain the transfer case. It's been a while since it's been loosened. Maybe since '95. I probably used the wrong crescent wrench. That bolt was SYE, not metric. After removing all the rear housing bolts, I removed the oil seal from the tail housing to expose the circlip that holds the whole assembly from sliding off. After removing the circlip, the tail housing slides off, exposing another circlip. Removing that slides the next tail housing off. And then lastly, the transfer case oil pump slides off, before removing the entire rear end of the case, exposing the output shafts and the chain. Beware the oil tube pickup and filter and magnet are in the portion of the case being removed. Then remove the front yoke from the output shaft. Then remove the chain and the rear output shaft from the case. From there, I removed all the old sealant from the case and from the cover with a scraper and a brass brush. Next was the most irritating part of the job, taking the old gears off the output shaft because the circlips are very hard to remove. After removal, slide the old gears off the old shaft and reinstall them on the new, shorter shaft. Then reinstall the circlips. Once that's complete, then you can reinstall the new rear shaft into the transfer case. Reinstall the chain onto the front and rear shafts. Some models of the NP231 require you to cut down the shift fork to make the cover clear. Luckily on this NP231 I didn't have to do that. Then prepare the case half with RTV sealant. When reinstalling the case, you must remember to put the spring on the shift fork, the oil pickup tube in the case, and the magnet in the case, as well as put the oil pump on and put the pickup inside the oil pump with the O-ring. Otherwise you will burn up your transfer case. As you will note, I put on the oil pump after I had mated the case, which was a mistake and took me some time to fish the oil pickup tube up into the oil pump to get it to seat, rather than taking the entire case apart again and ruining the sealant. Then install another snap ring on top of the oil pump. And slide on the speedometer gear and another snap ring. Then apply RTV to the tail housing and slide it on. Torque the case and tail housing bolts to 25 foot-pounds. Install a new spline seal before installing the yoke onto the rear of the transfer case. Then do the same for the front yoke. I bought a yoke wrench so I could hold the yoke while torquing the nuts. Otherwise there's no way to keep them from spinning. The yoke wrench bolts onto the yoke to keep the shaft from turning so that the nut can be tightened to 130 foot-pounds. Use red Loctite and then torque the yoke. Reinstall the front driveline to the yoke with the U-joint bearing caps. Torque the bearing cap bolts to 14 foot-pounds. Next, tighten the rear yoke nut to 130 foot-pounds. Install a cover bolt over the end of the shift fork using the O-ring and some RTV sealant. Install the skid plate that is also the transmission and transfer case support to the frame. The NP231 calls for 2 quarts of ATF plus 4, although some people have had really good results with 10W30 engine oil. I decided to stick with the ATF as is the recommended lubricant for this transfer case. On episode 3, I'll be re-gearing the front differential from 307 to 456 ring and pinion gearing, and installing new axle shafts with CV joints.